You know what we should have got, Mike? We should have got them to do a Carlisle's Ganning Down cheering for us.
Yeah.
Right, let's get going.
Hi, I'm Paul Simpson from the football club. Welcome to the Brunton Bugle.
Here we come, blue and white, and we're looking good. You'll be in for a fight, and we fight pretty good. Getting goals is our job, and we get goals good. Looking good, we are Carlisle United.
Hello everyone, you're listening to the Brunton Bugle, the number one place to get your Carlisle United fix in the podcast world. I'm Lee Rooney.
And I'm Mike Booth.
The inevitable has finally happened as United are relegated following a routine defeat at Northampton. We discuss that loss and what went wrong this season, the hard-earned follow-up win at Cheltenham, and look ahead to the penultimate home game against Blackpool this weekend. Yeah, it was only a matter of time, Mike. We did wonder how long they could stretch it out, but alas, a pretty, as I said there, routine defeat at Northampton was the end of United in League One for this season, wasn't it?
Or is it? Because if we finish fourth bottom and Reading go into administration, we're down, aren't we? Yeah, it's inevitable, wasn't it? It was, but I'm almost. I think I'm quite glad that it happened in an away game rather than a home game. I think.
Yeah, it sounds a weird thing to say that, doesn't it? But I think it just felt, which is it's not nice on those fans who travel and follow the team around the country every week, but I think there's a level of understanding about it all, isn't it? And yeah, it is what it is. We've gone down. It's it's the harsh reality of it. We've not been good enough this season, and we're going to talk about that in just a minute, aren't we? We've got no news to cover this week, actually, I should say. So there won't be a news section. We'll be going straight into the review of the Northampton and Cheltenham games. Then we'll look into the Blackpool game, including a chat with Nick from the excellent Seasiders Podcast ahead of the visit of the Tangerine Horde this weekend to Cumbria. But yeah, just before we get going, just a reminder, this season, once again, this podcast has been sponsored by the excellent Carlisle United Supporters Club London branch. Thank you very much for their support once again. They're doing lots of great stuff for the club in terms of fundraising and things like that, and also for exiles in terms of arranging match tickets and travel for games and designated pubs and that kind of thing. Really, really good stuff. If you don't have to live in London or the South East to join them, you can live wherever you want in the world. You just sign up, just go to the website carlisle.org to find out more information, or grab one of the guys at the games coming up. So I think they'll probably have a couple of them at Derby at the very least, I think. So if you can grab one of them there, that'd be great. Right, Mike, let's get into it then. We'll start off with the first one. Northampton 2, Carlisle United 0. Yeah, not much to really say about this one, was it, really? It was a bit of a damp squib of a game, really, overall. There wasn't, if you look at the stats, not a huge amount of chances for either side, really. They had 9 shots, 4 on target. We had 8 shots, 2 on target. And it was kind of just the story of our season, wasn't it, really, in terms of actually starting the game fairly well and looking promising in spells, and then conceding a really sloppy goal.
So many times as well. And, no disrespect to Northampton, but they didn't sort of blow us away like a sort of Bolton did at Brunton Park or some of the other teams we've faced. They're relatively ordinary, and, for us to go down with a whimper against them, it's just disappointing, but it's the story of our season, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It every time we start these games and we look promising, if we don't get that early goal, we're in trouble, basically, because there's a defensive risk coming up. And
I think as well, I don't like to do this and sort of hark back to players of last season, but so many times last season we'd be on top of that first 20 minutes. Christian Dennis would just grab a tap in, and it just would sort of set the pace for the game, and the opposition would be trying to claw the way back in, and without us getting that first goal, I mean, it's just been awful.
I mean, off the top of my head, I'm thinking here, Salford away is a prime example. Exactly. Gets that early tap in. And they did get sort of back into the game, but we had a little bit of momentum behind us, at least at that point, thanks to that goal. So yeah, no, you're absolutely right in terms of that. Going into the game, a lot of discussion about the incident, or the incidents, incident really, is it? The reported breaking of the curfew of being able to drink, 72 hours before a game, whatever agreement the players have. The names were flying around, everyone knew who it was, but it was obviously revealed when the match day starting lineup was announced, and both Jordan Gibson and Alfie McCalman were missing from the 18. Now, we've had no official confirmation it's those two yet, have we?
No.
But it's pretty obvious, isn't it?
Yeah, and with sort of other injuries and that in the squad, like if they're both fit and available, they'd be in that match day 18, wouldn't they?
Yeah, absolutely. Gibson would be starting if he was available. In fact, there's every chance McCalman will be starting if he was available. We'll talk about that in a minute, about those two and all that. In terms of the change to 11, Georgie Kelly came in for Jordan Gibson. A little bit of a surprise, really. Maybe we didn't think he was quite ready maybe to start a game, but got a good 60 minutes or so out of him in both games. That was a pleasing sight as well, because he never looked like he was struggling in either game either, did he? So we can talk about his performance a little bit later on. But in terms of the bench, also you had Huntington back and Harris returning to the bench for the first time in a while, which is good to see. Game itself, there was one early chance for United, to be fair, where Neil does quite well on the right, cuts back onto his left foot and curls a nice ball in that Georgie Kelly gets a really good head onto it, doesn't he? And the keeper tips it over the bar. And at that point you think, okay, you know what, we could cause some problems here today with these two up front. Didn't last, unfortunately. And the opening goal's another story of our season. Just really slack defending, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So it's a corner in from the right. And to be fair, it's actually Georgie Kelly who loses his man. If you look back at it, it's Springer who gets onto the end of it. He sends in a diving header that sort of gets blocked and it falls nicely for Bowie. And he just smashes the ball into the net from about 5 or 6 yards out. And from that point onwards, you were like, yeah, that's it, isn't it, really? That's game over. There was no feeling we could come back at that point, really, was there?
And I think the players feel the same way as well, to be honest.
Yeah. I mean, when you look through it, truth is, I don't think we had another real decent chance after that, did we? Actually, I'm just looking through what I've written down from the extended highlights that I watched. It was pretty much all Northampton. Very nearly scored direct from a corner. That Lewis did quite well to claw it away. There was a couple of ones that Lewis came out and forced Bowie wide as well when he was through on goal.
Yeah,
did quite well there, to be fair. There was one where Shering was unmarked at the back post as well, and he managed to put it wide.
There was the one, I think, is this the one that you're on about, where sort of Lewis had come out and Bowie had gone wide, but Lewis sort of stayed out with him?
Yes, that's the one. Yeah.
But because as a keeper, the worst, you have to make your decision. If you've come out, you have to stick to that, because if you try and backpedal and get back onto your line, you're kind of stuffed. Yeah, but there was a defender back as well.
There was a defender back, but he was still inside his area, and he was in that sort of position where Bowie couldn't get the ball towards goal, and he did actually. It was good goalkeeping, because at first I think when James described it on the commentary, he talks as if it wasn't great, but I think Lummy, to be fair, said to him, no, he's done well there. He's forced him out wide. He's made sure he hasn't got the. I might have got that wrong way around. It might have been Lummy that said it wasn't great or that. But either way, one of them said the other.
If that was a Jockle Anderson, who would have conceded a penalty and got sent
100%. There you go. There was another shot from Springer from the edge of the box that Lewis saved well. And then came the second goal. And, I mean, to be fair on this goal, that's just when we're throwing people forward, isn't it? Trying to get something. We get a corner late on. Ball comes into the box. I think Neil tries to almost control it so he can hook it over his shoulder or do something with it. Player nips in, and then Koike comes out of nowhere, and my God, that lad's fast, isn't he?
He is, but I expect Emmanuel to do a lot better there.
Emmanuel looked to me like a player who's not played much football recently. He didn't seem quite sure in himself. I think look, I know a lot of people don't rate him that much, but I think if he'd had a good run of 10, 15 games, I don't think he'd be dealing with it in the same way. He'd look like a player who wasn't really match ready in that sense. And he does the right thing at first. He just keeps him in his vision, and then he just takes that one step, doesn't he, and doesn't get it quite right. The lad does a little step over, he's past him, and I mean, Lewis couldn't really do much. He had to come out and try and stop him, gets around him and pokes it into the net, and it's 2-0 in due time, and it's game over. Relegation confirmed. Just get your initial thoughts on it, Mike. Just like thoughts on the season, relegation. We'll do a proper debrief after the season's done, I'm sure, but just right now.
Well, I think we all massively underestimated how tough League One would be this season.
Yeah, Simmer said it himself, hasn't he?
Yeah, because, we were in this league for a good few years, and last time round, and I was sort of very familiar with it, and the quality for me has gone up so much.
Yeah.
I mean, it's gone up tenfold, and I think a testament to that is you sort of see in League Two the old cheat code as it was. If a game wasn't going your way, you stick John Mellish in midfield, and other teams can't deal with his athleticism and his strength and his power and his energy. And so many League One central midfielders have similar levels of energy, similar levels of athleticism, and they're good on the ball as well.
The thing with the John Mellish thing is, and I've sort of said this recently, is we never did that when we were behind in games. If you look back, it was always when it was 0-0, and always when we were trying to actually just get a grip of the game a little bit more. But this season we've been using it as we're 1-0 behind. Let's throw him in there. It doesn't work. It just doesn't work in the same way. Then I feel like we never quite got the right balance. And in the last 3 games he showed actually he's capable of playing midfield. He can be a decent midfielder. At times, not the greatest player in the world, but he can do a job there 100%. I wouldn't want him there every week. Definitely not.
I mean, for me, Peterborough is a fine example of this. Peterborough are very good football inside, and you can't go toe-to-toe with Peterborough playing football because they'll just come out on top every week. So you need to combat their football with chaos and energy. And that's what we did. And Mellish should be great in midfield for those sorts of games. For other sorts of games where, a team might just be able to run rings round us anyway. I mean, you'd think Peterborough maybe could have done, but obviously they had a bit
like
of
a Wigan or something like that, this season.
The game would just pass him by in midfield, sadly. There's games for it and there's games where you shouldn't do it, but either way, I mean, for me, Mellish should be player of the season, I think. Wherever he's played, you can't accuse him of lack of effort. You can maybe accuse some others of it, but certainly not Big John.
Well, the thing with John as well is that we don't want to talk too much about John Mellish again because we get accused of banging him too much on here. We're big John Mellish stands, me and you, aren't we? I think the thing with John Mellish is that he's the only one who's been consistent over the whole season, pretty much. Other players have had like Jordan Gibson looked like he was going to play the season good up to Christmas, and I'd like to say that's gone off a cliff. There was a time when Sam Lavelle looked like he might even, and his form dropped off quite a bit. I think Callum Guy potentially would have been, obviously, through his injury. Even in the second half of the season, you've had a few of us who've done fairly well. Harrison Neal, but he's not been here for the whole season, and he's had a little dip. So I think he probably is the most consistent performer. I mean, to be honest, I don't think any player really would want to be player of the season this season, would they? To be honest, it's nothing to be massively proud of if we're going to be brutal here. I think you're right in terms of the standard of League One. It's gone up so much. I mean, I think generally the standard of football in England at most levels has gone up. Most teams can pass it about to a decent standard now.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just going to say, like League Two obviously was going up last season. You look back at old footage of when we last went up under Simo, and I mean, some of the players in League Two back then in like 2006, they'd be sort of National League players today. Yeah, so like you say, every league the standard has definitely gone up.
I think the big eye opener for me was that when I look back at it now, was the opening day against Fleetwood, and you look and we all came away from that thinking, wow, this is a step up. Yeah, and we thought, wow, these guys are going to be mid-table, but this is a step up. As it turns out, they potentially we're hopefully going to finish above them if we can get some results in the last couple of games, but literally just above us in the league. And that shows you how high the standard is, and we just haven't stepped up to it, I don't think. I think it's interesting. Our good mate Johnny picks out 2 games he said when he realised that, we're pretty much knackered this season. And I think he's got this bang on when he says this. The 2 games he says are Cheltenham at home and Barnsley away for 2 different reasons. Cheltenham at home because we were hopeless against a team that weren't particularly good, who just came and did a job, and they knew they had to get a result. They ground out a 1-0 win, and they were quite happy with that. And they we gifted it to them. At that point, you're like, that's not great. The Barnsley away game, because that is a game we should have won. We were the better team for most of it. We could have been 4 or 5 up at half time. We went in 1-0 up, and we still created a few chances after the break. To then come away with nothing from that game, despite the fact that we probably deserved it, kind of made you realise if we can't get a result even from that game, there's no chance, is there?
No, exactly.
it's been a tough old slog, and even I know some people reckon that Moxon didn't make the step up, but we've seen for Portsmouth now. He is a better player. I think he's just a player around him. We're dragging him down as much as anything. I just kind of feel like it's been a really good learning curve, and actually makes us realise the kind of player we actually need to get next season. I don't want us getting, sounds a terrible thing way of saying it, but League Two standard players necessarily next year. I want players who we think are going to be capable of making the step up to League One season after, because I don't want us to be rebuilding again the following summer.
No, I think sort of signings in the mould of Harrison Neal are kind of very good in that sort of they're young, they've proven themselves at League Two level, and they've, touch wood, Harrison Neal has a very sort of good fitness record as well. I think he played near enough 50 games for Barrow that season. I think that's sort of what we need. Be it they've proven themselves on loan or whatever, time down to long-term deals, and hopefully they can grow with the club.
I think looking at players who've done really well in League Two this season on loan spells, it was a really smart idea, actually. Yeah. There's a few names. I know one of my mates was throwing about Rob Apter, the lad who's at Blackpool, who I think Blackpool actually would rather have back next season for themselves. But, he's done really well at Tranmere, hasn't he? He's got quite a few goals there. He's a good winger. That's the kind of player we sort of need to be looking at, I think. I think we need to look at players who are going to be fit as well, because injuries have been a big issue, and we can't deny it. I mean, I think, actually, we might be getting towards the right sort of thing with that. As you mentioned, Harrison Neal's played so many times for Barrow last season, and this season he didn't play for Stevenage because he just wasn't picked. It wasn't because he was injured. Luke Armstrong, since he's come into the team, he's not missed a single minute. Yeah. He hasn't been subbed in any of the games.
And to be fair, I think that's starting to show a little bit. I think he's getting a little bit tired, which is to be expected, but having not played up until January, to then playing basically every minute since, it wasn't the 1st of Jan, it was the week after, wasn't it, that he could play.
And he's a hard working player as well, isn't he? You see he runs into the ground every single game, and I think it's going to put him in really good stead for next season, actually, to be honest. I think it really, really will help, definitely. And I think, look, if Harry Lucy is going to be our first choice keeper next season as well, we need to be a bit more thinking about in terms of ball-playing defenders maybe a little bit as well. Players who are capable of receiving the ball from him and playing it out, that can make a really, really big difference. So, yeah, it was a frustrating one, this one, Northampton, the defeat. It was made a lot tougher by the two players who've obviously been... Well, we don't know what's happening with them yet. Essentially, they've been temporarily suspended, haven't they, basically? They're not being considered for selection, I think is the way to describe it.
I don't think Simo's been asked either.
I think he was asked after the game by James, I think, and he said that currently there's still... But I might be wrong on that, but to be fair, at the moment, we don't know what's happening with him. Just a big disappointment, really, all that, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
It's so frustrating that, especially after a good game like that, just I think Lummy's comment today has been really good, actually, to be fair, and he's saying, just be sensible. The manager should be able to trust you. The manager shouldn't have to treat you like kids and sort you out all the time with these things, should he?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I don't know if you listened to this week's Carlisle Social, but Lumsden said something about how years ago we stayed down south because we had 2 games down south, and we'd won the first one. Yeah. And Simo basically said, right, you're all in the hotel, you've got a free bar tonight, enjoy yourselves, we've won. But all the players were in bed by 11 o'clock. And, Simo didn't have to sort of step in and kind of micromanage them and tell them when to go to bed, because they were doing the right things themselves, and that dressing room managed itself. But it just seems like a lot of these lads, they don't get it, like that squad did.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that, I know it's easy to look and think, well, you've got someone like Paul Huntington in there as a character when you think he can sort them out, but on his own he can't. There needs to be a few more people like that.
Exactly.
And I think he's right when he says that people like Georgie Kelly and Luke Armstrong will be those kind of people eventually, but they're just settling in now. Come the summer, when there's a bit of a clear out, they'll be the ones who'll take charge of the dressing room. They'll be the ones who'll be the ones, say, right, we're running this place basically for the gaffer.
Yeah, definitely.
You'd hope. But yeah, it's a bit disappointing, and being honest, I wouldn't be surprised if we didn't see either of them play for us again.
Yeah, I wouldn't be
certainly
surprised
not.
either.
Certainly not Gibson. McCalman, he's under contract for next season, but I mean, barely played at times. When you look at it, he's been out of the team for a long periods, and he's been a bit of a disappointment, if I'm being brutally honest. I thought potentially he could have kicked on, but trying to find a good position for him is a real challenge, because he's not really a number 6, he's not a number 10. He's kind of a busy number 8, but is he big enough for that? I don't know. It's a tough challenge trying to find a good role for him, because he's got qualities. He's undoubtedly got qualities, but yeah, really, really frustrating one with him. But yeah, relegation confirmed, which then brought us on to Tuesday night. Cheltenham Town 0, Car United 1. Just typical, isn't it?
Yeah.
just the most typical Car United thing you can imagine.
But I'm up for that. Like, we've got nothing to play for. Let's just ruin other teams' chances of staying up or going up or whatever. Let's just, cause havoc. It's what we do, isn't it?
I just realised I didn't do the results from League One that weekend, so I'll really quickly bang through them before we talk about the Cheltenham game. Blackpool got a 1-0 win over Cambridge. Bristol Rovers lost 2-0 at home to Bolton. Bristol Rovers are struggling quite a bit at the moment. Burton were battered 4-0 at home by Oxford United. Charlton got a 2-1 win over Barnsley. He was stuttering in the playoffs a little bit, aren't they? I think they're pretty much secured there, aren't they? But not great form to go into the playoffs in. A 1-0 win for Exeter over Stevenage, whose chances of the playoffs look pretty much gone now, I think. Leyton Orient beat Cheltenham 3-1. We obviously lost 2-0 at Northampton. Portsmouth got a 3-1 home win over Shrewsbury. Reading drew 1-1 with Lincoln City, and Wigan drew 0-0 with Port Vale. No major shock or bad results in there, I suppose, in that sense. So on to the Cheltenham game, Mike. It was a bit of a bombardment at times from Cheltenham. And yet, the stats bear out, Harry Lewis didn't actually have a save to make, did he?
No. Yeah, I mean, you're saying bombardment. I think that sort of paints a picture that they were well on top. But, yeah, we're relatively comfortable with it all. And that's a game for Paul Huntington. He's someone that
small
you want.
Small time pitch.
Yeah, exactly. You sort of man v man. You sort of have Huntington, and whichever striker he's marking, and nine out of 10 headers, Huntington is going to win. And generally keep them in his back pocket. And that's exactly what he did. And our 3rd clean sheet of the season, and Hunts has played in every single one of those games.
It's quite remarkable, isn't it? Actually, when you think about that, it's a crazy, crazy start. So we'll talk about Hunter in a minute then once we've wrapped up the game. But as you mentioned there, Paul Huntington came back into the starting 11 for this one. Also into the starting 11, Finn back. He replaced Jack Ellis for this one, which I thought Jack might have come out a little bit sooner, to be honest, because I think he was struggling in a few games, but I think actually he recovered in the last couple of games and did okay. I think this was maybe a case of giving him a little bit of rest and bring a bit of energy back into the team. So they obviously came in place of Dan Butterworth, who obviously injured in this game, in the game against Northampton, and he's out for the season now by the looks of things. Sean Maguire dropped off the bench as well because of his Achilles injury that he's carrying. And onto the bench came JJ Coyote along with Anton Dudek for this one. So that was interesting. Want to see him finally appear, which was a lovely sight, to be fair. Like it's been so frustrating for him, but yeah, it was nice to see him into the 11. So really, the change was to a back three again, but this time it was Lavelle and Barkley either side of Huntington, with Mellish still in midfield alongside Robinson and Neal. It was a little bit disparaging before the game, wasn't it? Some fans saying, "Oh, look at that! We've announced a team with 7 defenders in it or something." And well, maybe we should do that every bloody week. But the thing with saying that is, John Mellish, when he plays in midfield, does not play in midfield like a defender playing in midfield in the sense of sitting deep. He will get forward. He will attack. He's an attack-minded midfielder when he plays. So it's a bit misleading, that. Yeah,
and so is Finn back as a wing-back. He bombs up more than Ellis, I'd say. So, it is a little bit unfair, but it's what we needed. And I mean, on the whole, it's bizarre because, of the 3 clean sheets that we've kept this season, they've all been with this 3-5-2.
Yeah.
But I still think, individually, man for man, I think some of our players look better in a 4. I think Lavelle looks better in a 4.
Yeah.
I think, you and Adam had a very good discussion last week about Jack Ellis. And for me, I'm a fan of his, but he doesn't do enough going forwards for me to be a wing-back. I think he's perfectly capable as a full-back. He's very good defensively. But I think he's better as a full-back. And I think Armour as well, massive fan of Jack Armour. but he's not a wing-back. He's a full-back that's been playing at wing-back.
I think I disagree slightly on the Armour one. I think Armour's actually better as a wing-back. I think not better as a wing-back than... Sorry, better as a wing-back than Jack Ellis is as a wing-back, if you know what I mean. I think he still offers plenty going forward. I think there's bits he can work on, but I think he also needs a bit of support from someone going forward. Then actually, he works well as a wing-back with John Mellish, simply because of the fact that John can do the bombing forward a little bit.
Yeah.
I
mean, Armour has a very good delivery into the box, but have you ever seen him beat two players?
No, not massively, but you don't have to do that as a wing-back. I mean, Danny Granger never really did that as a wing-back.
No, true.
If you've got a decent... You don't have to have... I mean, you can have... It mixes up, doesn't it? If you've got one wing-back who can whip a decent ball in and one who's going to go and beat a couple of men on the other side, it offers you something different, doesn't it? Because Back doesn't have the luxury of an underlapping centre-back, really, does he, on his side? So he has to do a lot of that sort of work. But it was nice to see him back in the team, because he's been out for a little while. In terms of chances, early on, there was one chance for Cheltenham, wasn't there? Joe Nuttall, who's on loan from Oldham at Cheltenham, he was given a chance about 12 yards out from a sort of loose pass, and he just scuffed it wide. I don't even scuffed it wide. He just sort of passed it wide, didn't he? It was a really weird sort of finish from him. Not a great chance at all. And then we just started to get a grip of the game after that, didn't we? And we had a few chances. Kelly had one from 30 yards straight at the keeper that was well saved. Armstrong did well to hook one towards goal, but it was played just behind him by Back, just wide of the post. Armour, as you mentioned there, he tried a Danny Granger special, didn't he, from 30 yards? That didn't go too far high and wide, to be fair. Wasn't far off the angle of post and goal. And then Nuttall had a big chance for them where, it's weird, Robinson just stood to one side and let him through almost, didn't he? And he sort of thought, I'm going to have a go here. And to be fair, he completely fluffed it. He went high and wide. And then came the only goal of the game. And it was a rare, decent set piece in this one, because it was mentioned on the commentary, wasn't it, that Jack Robinson's corners were not particularly great in this game, were they? Bar one. And it was the one that mattered, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And it's a goal that we've conceded a few times this season ourselves, where it goes to the far post, head it across, and someone's completely unmarked at the other post to knock it in.
Yeah, so the ball was played into the near post. I thought Lavelle got the flick on at first, but I've watched the pitch side camera, and I think it's actually the Cheltenham defender who flicks it on. And then Barkley does really well to keep it alive, nods it down towards the far post, and then Lavelle's there to bundle it into the roof of the net. And he's miles on side because there's a lad on the line, so there's no issue with that. And 1-0, and truth is, we never really looked like we were going to let that lead slip, which was a nice luxury this season, wasn't it, really, in the way we played? I mean, into the second half, there was a chance for Lewis Neal with a shot from 20 yards that the keeper held well. And then Mellish nearly... Right, this one on the commentary... James, I think, tried to say it was a cross. At first I thought, yeah, I agree with that. But then I look back at it. Coyote's nowhere near where he's playing the ball. I wonder if he might... I don't know if he was maybe just thinking someone might come in at the far post, but I wonder if it was at a shot this from Mellish, this chip. It's hard to tell.
It was his weaker foot, wasn't it?
Yeah. So that might explain it.
Yeah, it is hard to tell. Yeah, who knows? Only Big John knows. But
if it goes in, I'm claiming that as goal of the season. Probably if it had gone in, but it didn't in the end. Cheltenham had a few scrambly moments, but never ever really looked like they were going to get anything. And in the end, a 1-0 win was the result, and dents Cheltenham's hopes of staying up, which maybe not a bad thing for us, because I can't see them doing anything in League Two next season if they come down. So actually, them coming down might not be, as much as it's a long journey, might not be the worst thing in the world. I'd rather be facing them than Port Vale almost. Port Vale's closer.
Yeah.
Famous last words out. They'll probably go win the title next season. Now I've said that, but I just so frustrating, isn't it, Mike? It really frustrating. Standout bits from the performance. I've not written down too many talking points because I haven't had time, but we'll go through a few bits. I mean, as I mentioned, the Harry Lewis didn't have a say to make, but everything else he did really well, didn't he? He was coming, claiming stuff, he was punching it. And that's kind of what we want next season. We want to have games where he's actually not going to have much to do, and then hopefully when that one moment comes, he will produce that brilliant save that we know he's capable of. That's what we'd rather be in a situation like that next season with Lewis. Defensively, Huntington's going to get a lot of credit, isn't he? because just mentioned there, he comes in, he punches and kicks everything. We'll talk.
It's the organisation as well. It was massive,
absolutely,
I think.
Absolutely. So I thought Lavelle had a really good game as well. Actually, to be fair, he really stepped up again. I've got to give a shout to Ben Barkley though. I thought Ben Barkley was fantastic in this game. I think actually since that Shrewsbury game where he wasn't great, he didn't have a great game at all. I think he's come back quite strong. And we talk about. I know people are going to say, we've got to be brutal. Maybe in the summer we've got to make changes. I think Barkley's got something about him still. The problem is keeping him fit. That's the problem. We've seen that the last 2 seasons. But I just feel like you see little moments there and you think, actually, you know what? He is so good. He's so calm and so good on the ball. But he was so big and strong in this game as well. He was winning his headers and he was taking control of the game, wasn't he, at times? Yeah,
I mean, it's easy to forget as well. When Stockport signed him, he was basically like a League One player. And they signed him on League One wages. I think that he'd probably benefit from a season in League Two next season, where we know that he's good enough for League Two because we've seen him do it before, and hopefully boost his confidence. And we'll see what happens with him in the future.
Huntington. It's a big question. This one we'll discuss obviously in the coming weeks when we talk about retainers and stuff. Do you keep him for next season, knowing we're going to be in League Two next year?
I don't think I do. I think
I think this is a really tough debate. This, and I think the problem is there's issues with fitness there, but I do wonder if we just need some fresh faces as much as anything, and that's not no criticism of him. It's just, but at the same time, we saw how good he was last season in League Two. I know he's a year older now, but. Yeah, he's still got the football brain there, hasn't he?
Yeah, but I think I'd rather have maybe another sort of 30-year-old organising centre half who has a bit more pace than him and just has a little bit more fitness than him as well. I think, you can sort of. Some players. I think Clint Hill was knocking on 40 when he played for us, and you just couldn't tell. But I feel like. You look at Hunts and you can see that his age is kind of getting the better of him a bit.
I think it's those couple of calf knocks he's had this season that would worry me as much as anything. I don't think it's the age, it's the fact that he's had them. And I worry that you give him a deal and then he gets one of them and he's out for 7-8 weeks or something, and you're like, right, okay, so we're going to have to deal with him for that long period. I think it's a big debate. I suspect the fact that he hasn't featured much suggests he probably won't get a deal. But
no.
I imagine it's not the easiest decision Simon will have to make because we know what he can do and we know his experience. It's hard to find players with that experience sometimes. As much as you say want someone with a bit more pace, so does everybody else. That's the problem, isn't it? That's the big problem there.
But the difference is going into this season. If other League Two clubs are after this mythical 30-year-old centre half, we're kind of in terms of what we can offer, we're near the top of the table for that. So you'd hope so. Well, to be fair, we don't know because I know for a fact they're using this stats bomb now, aren't they? So we might find some of the names that come up as names you don't expect, and you're like, oh wow, where's that one come from? And for example, look, Greg Abbott was at Blackpool v Fleetwood last night. We saw that someone put a picture of him meeting him before the game. So I suspect he's probably not looking at Blackpool players because I imagine they probably won't drop down to us. But there's a few players you wouldn't mind pinching off Fleetwood. And I think Wirrd is probably out of our price range now because they tied him down for a longer deal. But there's one or two more there. You never know. So it's be interesting to see what happens. Midfield wise, we're pretty solid. I thought. I think they all did their bit. I think Neil had another great game, and like you said, look. We know he hasn't got the masses of pace, but he's so big and so strong, and he covers. All things considered, he covers so much ground, doesn't he? It's really, really impressive. Big John again. I feel like there is still a role for him to do in midfield occasionally there. And actually, Jack Robinson's got a bit of stick of late, and I thought that was probably one of his better games in midfield. It wasn't a game for cultured passing or anything like that, but he, occasionally picked a few passes out. He did his job. I wanted to get that confidence back on his set pieces because we saw that for a few weeks. Actually, maybe a month or so, his set pieces were excellent, weren't they? Yeah.
And it's just gone. It's just bizarre, isn't it? Really, really strange one. In attack, those two are going to be a great partnership next season, Armstrong and Kelly, aren't they?
Yeah, definitely. But it's interesting for me because we've seen a lot of this 3-5-2 since Samo came back, and for me it works best when your strike partners are sort of a slow man, fast man. And neither of them are sort of particularly slow, but you know what I mean. They don't sort of have the pace of a J.K. Gordon or an Amari Patrick to run in behind. So, I mean, for me, I think the amount of money that they're both on next season, they should both be our sort of starting forwards, 100%. I don't think 3-5-2 is the system for that. I wouldn't mind seeing us go traditional 4-4-2 and have our pace in the team from wingers and just getting crosses in the box for them too, because they will both score an absolute hatful. And to be honest as well, you know, I think we wouldn't need a complete and utter overhaul if we did that, because, you know, you only play 2 centre mids. Well, we signed 2 centre mids in January, you know, and we've got
coming back.
Yeah, Callum Guy coming back, obviously. But I think as well, that right wing in a 4-4-2, I think Danny Butterworth, that could be his position. Because an issue with him is when he sort of plays as a 10 and he's got too many decisions to make and he doesn't know if he should pass it left, pass it right, you know, beat the man, he doesn't know what to do. I think if you play him on the right in a 4-4-2, it's simple, just beat your man and get across him. Yeah,
but I'm not convinced about he's got the quality of a cross on him. For me,
maybe
one of the big things with Butterworth is actually technically he's a very good finisher. If you watch it, he can strike a ball really well, and actually getting him down the middle benefits. But I totally get your point. Actually, taking some of that decision making out of his game would probably help him a little bit. So it's a conundrum there. I kind of disagree with you. I think it could work, that 3-5-2 with those two. I think especially at League Two level, they're just going to bully centre backs for fun. They really enjoy they enjoy the fight. Kelly certainly does. Armstrong actually benefits because he's, like I said, he's not the quickest, but he has got a bit of pace for him. And actually, his movement's excellent. Actually, if you watch as well, he covers ground really well, and he'll get into some good positions. And I think he'll probably end up outscoring Kelly. But Kelly's going to be such a big contributor to our season next year. I'm really being hopefully, you know, fingers crossed, but you never know. Substitutes, obviously Jack Ellis came on for Finn back, and then the return of JJ. Nice to see, only his second league appearance of the season. So, as we mentioned before, so frustrating for him and for everyone. And the most frustrating thing is actually when he came on, he looked lively. He used the ball well, and you were reminded of like, oh, you know what? He's actually a really good dribbler of the ball. He brings it down well. He brings people into play. He's so big and strong. You're like, oh my! If we'd had that all season, I'm not saying there's no guarantees. And I'm similar to this. There's no guarantees, anything. But I think if we had him all season, I think we'd still be in a fight of staying up right now.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's worth thinking back because I remember we played Port Vale away. I think it was the last game before. Before the summer transfer window was wrapped up, and saying after that game, look, we really need a striker. Like we desperately need a striker to link all this together and be the last piece of the puzzle. Yeah. And when Coyote signed, we were like, yeah, that's it. That's exactly what we need. Yeah. And obviously, that wasn't to be. And because at that point we weren't in anywhere near the dire straits that we're in now. But going the full season, I think. I don't want to say we put all our eggs in one basket, but you don't expect him to be out for as long as he was. I think at the time with the initial injury, I think we were expecting him back in October, weren't we?
It was January. Start of January was when we were hoping for him to be back because it was a dislocated shoulder, wasn't it? So it was always going to take a while. But yeah, for that to happen, it's just. You think last season Ryan Emerson did the same injury, but we had cover. We had players who could play there, and it wasn't a massive problem. This season, it was just. On another, like I said, another season we would, you know, different, you know, sliding doors moment really, isn't it? I suppose in our campaign.
Yeah.
But yeah, big shout out to the away following as well. 391 travelling down on a Tuesday night all the way to Cheltenham. Obviously, not all of them have travelled all the way, but they've travelled from all over the country. 391 on a Tuesday night for a game when we're already relegated. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Incredible. You all need your heads checked, but fantastic. Someone joked with me saying, like, anyone who's taken a child there, they should have Carlisle Social Services waiting outside their way turnstile, demanding to see gas bills to know whether they're local or not, if they've come all the way from Carlisle. take the kids off. It's been mad. But those kids had a great little trip. They got to see an away win, which, you know...
Well, exactly,
I'm trying to think. Well, we seen an away win this season. We went to Bolton, didn't we?
Right, and Peterborough.
Oh, Peterborough, of course, as well. So, God, we've won more away than home this season, haven't we?
Yeah.
That's terrifying, isn't it, really? But there you go. So good win. Just got to keep the momentum going. And a clean sheet as well, actually, is as much as anything. It's nice to see and give Harry Lewis a bit more confidence as well. If we go into this weekend's game and try and do similar, that would be ideal, wouldn't it, I think? Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
But there you go. Just wrapping up the League One results from the weekend as well. From the midweek, sorry. Blackpool, as mentioned there, they played Fleetwood. They won 1-0 in that game in the Fylde Coast Derby. Bristol Rovers lost 2-0 at home against Reading. Charlton got a 2-2 draw with Wigan. Leyton Orient drew 2-2 with Exeter, and Stevenage got a 2-1 win over Barnsley. As I mentioned there, Barnsley really stuttering into the playoffs, aren't they? They're going to be in there, but they're not going in with any form, which can be a challenge for teams. So there you go. Anything else to wrap up from those games, Mike?
No, I don't think so.
I think we've covered it all, haven't we, really? Like I said, we'll do a full debrief of the season and, and what went wrong. And
a post-mortem.
Post-mortem, I think the transfer window business will be discussed. And, we know there's mitigating circumstances to an extent, but still, even though it needs to be talked about. But there you go. Right, I'm going to take a short break, and then I'll be back with part 2, where I'll be speaking to Nick from the excellent Seasiders Podcast as part of the Behind Enemy Lines section, looking ahead to this weekend's game. We're back in just a tick.
Hi, I'm John Halpin, and you're listening to the Brunton Bugle.
Yes, and we're now into part 2 of this week's Brunton Bugle, where we go into Behind Enemy Lines, where we talk to an opposition podcast ahead of the big game at the weekend. Obviously, this weekend we're playing Blackpool. They'll be making the trip up the M6 to Brunton Park, and we're speaking to Nick from the Seasiders Podcast. Nick, how are you doing?
I'm very well, Lee. Thanks for having me on.
No problem at all. Thank you for giving up your time to speak to us. Before we get going and ask you a few questions about Blackpool's season, just tell us a little bit about your podcast and how it came about.
So I'm the co-host. It's my good friend John Aspinall who kind of set it up really quite a long time ago now. I think we're about must be 12 years, something like that.
Wow.
He decided to start doing the podcast. We started off in his bedroom with this little recorder, just holding a microphone between ourselves and listen back to it. And it's a bit raw to say the least, but over time we got better equipment. Just started doing kind of post-match shows and then preview shows for the next game. Had a bit of a break during the boycott years when we all stopped going. When we were trying to get rid of our previous owners, the Oystons. So it was difficult. You couldn't really do the pod then because none of us were at the games, and the focus was on stuff off the field rather than on it. And then thankfully we got rid of them and we started up again. We used to kind of all do the pod round at John's house, and then with COVID happening, we ended up, doing laptops and just carried on doing it from there, really. So there's about 5 or 6 of us who we kind of alternate between. We try and do it every week, but it doesn't always happen. It's just availability for people. And it's kind of just grown from there, really. And, we enjoy doing it. It's a lot easier when you've won than when you get beat. Enjoy it.
As you can imagine, you're right about that in terms of being better when you've won and not when you've been beat. It's been a tough slog for us this season on this podcast, I'll tell you that much. Yeah. Right, let's talk about Blackpool then. So obviously last season you relegated from the Championship. I think there was reasonable expectations by fans of a lot of clubs that you guys will be challenging for at least a top 6 place and bounce back at the first attempt. But it just hasn't quite worked out, has it? I mean, I'm looking at it. You've not had an awful season, but it's just not quite been good enough. It just there's not quite that little edge to push you into the top 6, and there's still a chance of getting there at the moment, but it's looking a slim chance as each week goes by.
It is, yeah. It feels like we've been 8th forever. We just can't quite push into that top 6. And I think there was an expectation at the start of the season. I mean, as poor as last season was, and it was a disaster, but sort of fresh start. Critch came back. We were told it was, around about a top 6 budget for the division. So there was an expectation with that probably, a minimum of the playoffs was realistic. And it hasn't happened. And it's been a season of, we've been consistently inconsistent. And whilst our home form has been good, I think we're probably up there with Pompey, Derby and Bolton in terms of our home form. It's been the away form, particularly against teams at the lower end of the table where we've just been terrible, like sort of 1-0 defeats. And, you can't do that and expect to get into that top six. No. It's been really, really poor. And the other thing is the style of play, it's not very exciting. So even with some of the wins, you're going out the ground sort of feeling a little bit deflated, even when you've managed to pick up 3 points, because it's not really edge of your seat attacking football. It's very much kind of formulaic and playing out from the back, knock it round the back, go to midfield, come back again. And it's all about possession, which possession is great if you're doing something with it and creating chances, but when you're not, it can be pretty boring. And teams have not had to be very good at times to beat us, and that's where the frustration's been. And yeah, we are, having said all that, we are just outside the playoffs and there is still a chance. But I think back to, because we've got the best record of any team in the playoffs, of getting promoted through it. And all those times we did it, you kind of know, don't you, when you're on a roll and you feel like, I don't really mind who we play because we turn up and we'll be good enough. There isn't that feeling this season. It's almost like we're not really good enough for the top six. And if somehow we snuck in, I'd be a bit worried, to be honest, because I think the teams that are in there, when they're on the game, like Peterborough, just passed it round us, quite a bit. We did beat Bolton at home, and that'd be a bit of a derby for us. But there just isn't really a feeling amongst the fan base that we're good enough to be in that top six.
Yeah. So Neil Critchley, you mentioned he returned last summer for his second spell in charge. How's it gone so far? I mean, you interestingly mentioned about the style of play there, because I seem to remember he was quite well received first time around the style of football you played, and it just maybe hasn't quite worked the same this time. Yeah,
he's been very rigid in this kind of formation with 3-5-2 or 5-3-2, and not changed from that. And we've kind of shoehorned players into wing-back positions when it's not their best position. And first time round, when he came, he originally tried to play a 4-3-3 and realised after about 8 or 9 games it wasn't working. I think he'd only won 1 in his first 8, but this was during COVID, so there wasn't really any pressure from the stands, and he was a new manager, so even if I think fans were in, he would have been given time. And he was very pragmatic first time round. He'd kind of change our style to suit the opposition, and when we went up, certainly in the Championship, he was very good at looking at who we were playing and what style we needed to play to try and, it might even be just sneak a 1-0 away win with only having 1 chance, but he was very good at making us hard to beat. And this time around, he's sticking with that formation, regardless of whether it's working or not in games. And there's some games, like I say, there's quite a long list of games where you could see after 10 minutes, this isn't working, but it's not going to change. There's going to be no subs at half time. He's not one for doing that. It's wait for 70 minutes, bring a couple of subs on, but don't change the system. And, it's like doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result, and we don't get it. So I think there was also a little bit of, because the way he left, and I don't blame him for leaving. You go into to coach in the Premier League with Villa, probably earning a lot more money. We'd all do it if we had the chance in our jobs to go and earn more money, So I don't blame him for that. But I think the way it happened, it was just very sudden, and it was on the back of, us doing well, and he built a really good rapport with the fan base, and it just felt a bit like, I can't believe it, he's gone. So I think when he came back, there was a sort of, I don't think he had the credit in the bank that he had first time round. No. He would have needed to get off to a good start, and with the style of play, that there is a percentage of the fan base who do want him gone. Just because it is pretty boring to watch at times. I'm kind of, the owners said he's not going anywhere for a start, so he's going to be with us next season. I think he has to get off to a good start next season. There'll be a rebuild in the summer, but there are people who don't want him there. Yeah, so I mean, from the outside looking in, you think we're just outside the playoffs, but it's not been great and it has been inconsistent.
So I was looking at the January transfer business you guys did, and it's pretty, not non-existent, but it's pretty quiet, wasn't it? There wasn't really much comings and goings at all, really, for you guys, was there? Was there a level of disappointment among the fans about that?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, you always feel like you want more players, don't you? And this season, last season we had Jerry Yates and he went to Swansea. We got Cal Joseph and he was injured when he joined, so didn't play for quite a bit. So it probably was a case of we could have maybe done with a couple more, and that's the thing as well in terms of sort of creativity. We've got Karamoko Dembele, who's kind of our shining light, really. When he's on it, he's great. But other than that, there isn't a lot of creativity in the team. We got George Byers in from Sheffield Wednesday, who's a very tidy player. Last summer, we got Ollie Norburn from Peterborough, who, whenever I saw him play for Peterborough, I thought he was really good and he was going to be great for us, sort of run the show. And he did start off quite brightly, but he's kind of faded as the season's gone on. And I think with some of these players, a bit of it is just down to the system they're playing in. It seems to nullify them a little bit. And we kind of get to the edge of the area and there's a reluctance to shoot, or we're not really sure what to do. And then we end up going back again. And that's when the crowd get frustrated. So, yeah, I mean, I say every transfer window, it's a massive window, whether it's January or the summer. And it's going to be the same again this summer,
Yeah. So realistically, do you think you're going to be able to rebuild in the summer and then have a real go at the top six at the least next season?
I think we kind of have to, really. I think, like I said before, with Critch, there are people who, want him gone. So if we don't get off to a good start next season, I think it could be quite difficult for him. We're going to lose Dembele. He's on loan. There's a lot of clubs looking at him. Certainly at championship level, which is where I think he can play. So he's not going to be staying with us. There's a few others out of contract. We may look at bringing Jordan Rhodes back, and he's been one of the highlights this season. He came in, had a very good first half of the season, had a little bit of a barren spell, and then had a couple of injuries, and he's now out for the rest of the season, unfortunately. So he's maybe got another season in him in League One if he wanted to come back. He did enjoy his time here. But, yeah, we've got to find a replacement for Dembele. We've got, I think, hopefully Rob Apter will come back and play. He's on loan at Tranmere. He's done really well for them, scored a lot of goals. But again, it's what system you're playing him in. He doesn't really like a 4-4-2, Critch. And we had Owen Dale, who was a winger, good attacking player. We sold him to Oxford. But I think it's just got to... We were talking about what needs to change next season on our pod last week, and we can't carry on doing more of the same, of this kind of bland, pass-it-around-the-back football. You want to be a bit more entertained, and you're going to get games where you won't be. We accept that, but you want to see a bit of a plan, really, that we're trying to play football the right way. So I think, it will be quite a big turnover in the summer, and I think he will be backed. We've got a good owner in Simon Sadler. He's a Blackpool lad, and so he knows the town, and obviously wants the team to do well. So I think he will be backed, but it won't be easy next season. If you look at the Championship and who could come down. There's some big clubs in there who are in around that relegation, and you look at the teams that are probably going to come up. Stockport, they've got some good, exciting players. Wrexham, obviously, they'll spend money, won't they? So it's not going to be easy, and it's a division that you can, get stuck in. It's not easy to get out of. So we'll see.
Could be a challenge. So looking ahead to this weekend's game, who would you say the big danger men out that we need to watch out for? Obviously, you mentioned Jordan Rhodes is out injured, so I did have him written down. I hadn't actually checked if he was fit or not.
Unfortunately, he got a knee injury against Wigan, and it's ruled him out for the season. Well, up front, we've kind of been changing it round a little bit. We've got Shane Lavery, Kouassi, Joseph, and Beasley as well. And Bees is our second top scorer. He's into double figures, and he's a funny player. He like a lot of strikers, he needs service, and we don't always do that, and he can be a little bit anonymous at times, as they all can. I think Dembele is the one to look out for, just in terms of when he gets on the ball, he will run at players. But I think teams are starting to work out what you need to do with him, which is probably stick a couple of players on him, foul him a couple of times, and sometimes his head can go down a little bit. And then other than that, George Byers is doing well for us. We've got on loan from Sheffield Wednesday. But we're not scoring a lot at the moment. That's the problem. I can see it sort of probably playing out for a 0-0, to be honest. But we're not a team that will come at you and sort of, attack from the off. We don't really. I'll be very surprised if we do anyway, because that's not the way we normally play. We set up quite cautiously. It's like a safety first approach. So yeah, I don't see it being us, being on the attack from the off, and we're not a team that comes piling forward and scoring goals from all over the place.
That's interesting though, because we've only kept one clean sheet at home all season. So if we manage a second in our penultimate home game, I think we'll be pretty pleased with that, to be fair.
Yeah.
You guys are going to be bringing a big following up this weekend. You always do bring a big following up to Brunton Park. Have you got any memories of games against the Blues, particularly up at Carlisle?
I'm trying to think. Last time we came up, I think it was a draw a few seasons ago. I remember coming out of the train station. I don't know what the police were expecting, but it was like going back to the 80s. We kind of got marched to, is it the Wetherspoons, sort of across from the station? And because I like a real ale or two, and I'd looked at a few pubs and thought we'll have a nice day out. But it was, you're staying in here and you're not going anywhere.
You'll have got marching to the Griffin, probably. I think that's the one on the corner by the station. So it's not very pub, to be fair.
No, and they weren't for letting us leave, and then it was marched up to the ground. So. There was a draw last time. I remember coming, it was a night game, the season we got promoted. I think you beat us 1-0, but we played really, really well, and kind of, we were on the train back, and everyone was saying, do you know what? Although we lost, we felt quite optimistic, and that's when we went on the mad run, So that was a good one, even though we'd lost. In terms of the games at Bloomfield Road, I remember there was one early 90s where we beat you 6-0. We were brilliant at home that season, absolutely flying. But I enjoy, coming up to Carlisle. It's one of the trips to look out for when we are in the same division, and it's unfortunate you've gone down. Really, I think for you guys as well. Everybody looks out for the away fixture at Blackpool, don't they? When they're in that division, it's a good day out for away fans. I think we're bringing 1,500, which is all we've got. Unfortunately. But I think the win last night against Fleetwood, a lot of people waiting to see what happened, because if we didn't win, I think that was pretty much our chance over, and it'd just been more of a day out and a couple of beers than not, sort of optimistic of getting into the playoffs.
Yeah, you basically need a result this weekend, don't you? And then a few results to go your way to have any chance.
Yeah.
By the looks of things, so that's the way it is. Nick, you've been very generous with your time. Thank you very much. But before you go, let's have a prediction for this one. Sounds like you're not predicting many goals, at least.
No, I'll tell you what, I'll go 1-1. I think it'll be 1-1.
Fair enough. Right. Thanks very much for giving me your time, Nick. Really appreciate it. Obviously, if anyone wants to find his podcast, Seasiders Podcast, I'm sure they're doing a preview ahead of this weekend's game. We'll be back just after the break, and me and Mike will be looking ahead to the game itself.
Hi, it's Tom Piatic II, and you're listening to the Brunton Bugle.
And we're back for part 3 of this week's Brunton Bugle, the relegation celebration, if you want to call it that. It's not a celebration at all, is that? I'm actually be deadly serious about this kind of thing. Thanks again to Nick from the Seasiders Podcast for giving up his time to speak to us about all things Blackpool ahead of weekend. Put my teeth back in. Ahead of this weekend's big game, for them, at the very least anyway, because it's probably the last chance for them to keep their playoff hopes alive, isn't it, Mike? So Carlisle United versus Blackpool this weekend. What are you expecting from this one? I mean, the big hope here is that we just got to try and end the season on a positive at home, because we've had these decent results away from home recently, and actually, form-wise in the form table, we've moved up a little bit. We're up into, what position are we in now? Is it 7th, something like that, I think? 17th, sorry. I've got a bit ahead of myself there. 17th in the form table, so we're doing all right in terms of that. It just... Get a couple of home wins, or maybe at least one home win in the last 2 home games. That's what we want, isn't it?
Yeah, followed by completely ruining Derby's promotion/title chances on the final day. I think, that's all you can ask for, isn't it?
I mean, I'm looking at the League One table here. I didn't realise just how tight it was at the top. Wow, so Bolton and Derby, 1 point between them. We're going to be live on Sky on the last day, aren't we? Which worries me. That really does worry me for some reason.
I've got PTSD from a league game away at Brentford that was live on Sky years ago.
4-0 one.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at the remaining games the 2 clubs have got, actually. It's just going off on a little bit of a tangent here. But yeah, I mean, Derby County play Wickham tonight. I'm guessing a rearranged game because of that competition that Wycombe played in at the weekend that we don't talk about. Not the easiest game in the world. Wycombe's form's not too bad of late, I don't think. I'm just sort of checking the table here. Yeah, Wycombe. Where's Wycombe? Yeah, Wycombe are 11th in the form table, so they're doing fairly well at the moment. Bolton's remaining games are quite tough, actually. There's a couple of tough ones in there. They've got Portsmouth at home the weekend. Then they've got Shrewsbury at home, which shouldn't be too tough. Port Vale are obviously fighting to stay up at home. And then they finish off on the last day, Peterborough away, which is a huge game, actually, when you look at it, really. By then, Peterborough will be secured in a playoff place. They can't finish in the top three, pretty much. Well, no, actually, to be fair, I'm just looking here. Peterborough got 2 games in hand on those two. So, actually, Peterborough win their 2 games in hand. They get to 80 points. So that is a big game, actually. Wow. Anyway, bit of a tangent there. Let's talk about Carlisle v Blackpool. So what are you expecting from this game?
I'd be very happy, with us just ruining their promotion chances a little bit. I think a draw wouldn't be awful. I think, if we can sort of finish the season getting,
a few games unbeaten.
Yeah, or not even a few games unbeaten, just like 1 defeat of our last 3. I'd be happy with that.
Yeah, I think I tend to agree with that. I think the aim would surely be to try and maybe sneak into second bottom. Get a little bit of pride back from that. That's a little, target almost. But yeah, I think generally I'd agree with you. I mean, what's your thoughts on Blackpool? I think, because I can't remember, I'm pretty sure I found my predictions the other day from early in the season, and I had them in the playoffs this season.
I think so I did as well.
I'm a little bit, I feel a little bit, not let down, but a little bit, they've just underwhelmed slightly, haven't they? It's not like they've been awful. They've not been lower mid-table. They've been there and thereabouts, just outside the playoffs, but they don't seem to have been able to get themselves up there, have they? Yeah,
it's been a bit of a tough season for them, really. But again, though, you look at some of the other sides that are ahead of them. I mean, like Lincoln and Oxford. I don't think anyone saw them both been up there.
Well, Lincoln have come out of nowhere, haven't they? They've
exactly.
Shot the table.
Yeah,
Stevenage
exactly.
were up there as well. I don't think anyone expected them to be challenging for it.
No, exactly.
I'm just looking at the little, you can get that progress map that shows you position throughout the season. They've only been in the top 6, bar the opening day, for 1 game, which was the 14th game of the season. Beyond that, they spent most of the season in 8th place. Which is where they're at now. They've dropped down to 9th, up to 6th briefly, a couple of times, but mostly been sat there. There was a period sort of towards the start of the season, the first 10 games, where they were sort of low mid-table, but 8th place is where they've been. So where they're going to finish is probably about right, really, in the grand scheme of things, isn't it?
Well, yeah, definitely.
I mean, looking through their squad, they didn't do much business in January in terms of transfers. I think there's kind of an understanding there that they'll probably have a bit of a clear out in the summer and make a few changes there. But looking through their squad, there is quality in there, isn't there? I mean, the lad Dembele on loan from Brest in France, he's a good player.
Yeah,
but it kind of feels like they're just lacking that little spark in there, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, like one for me that I found quite curious was that Kylian Kouassi, who played for Sutton last season, and he played well against us on the final day, but he wasn't. He's going to get a big move type League Two, because I mean that's what it is really. A big move, but he was a free agent, wasn't he? So I think if they had to pay money for him, I don't think he'd have sort of maybe got a League One move.
No, absolutely. I think it was a bit of an unusual one, wasn't that one? I think Ollie Norburn was a decent signing from Peterborough. I always really liked him. He's a good solid midfielder. Pennington as well from Shrewsbury. Really good centre back. But actually, when you look through it, they've even looking through it, some of their summer signings have already left. Tashan Oakley Booth has gone to Estrella. They signed the lad. Was it Doug Farm? Was he signed as well? No, he's a bit long term, isn't he? There's a few there's been a bit of turnaround there. Owen Dale was a strange one. He's a good player. I like him, and yet they don't seem to find a way to fit him into their system, because he's Critchley, their manager. It's obviously his second spell there. He's quite rigid in the way he plays, isn't he? It's very much a 3-5-2, and they're very much a possession based team, aren't they?
Yeah, definitely. Although, well, there's a player that we sort of didn't mention. It's sort of the elephant in the room, who we were allegedly linked with in the summer, which is Jordan Rhodes.
Yeah, linked with, I think, is stretching it.
Well,
we might have sent maybe Greg sent a text message to Huddersfield saying Jordan Rhodes ? And didn't get a reply. I imagine, but no.
But
yeah,
he's been banging him in.
But he's injured now. He's out for the season now. He picked up a knee.
Is he out for the season now?
Yeah, he's not going to feature this weekend. So that's a bit of a blow for them as they push for the playoffs. And I think, as Nick mentioned there on the chat, the problem they've got is if they sneak into the playoffs, they're not going to be doing it on brilliant form, and they've not been that great. It's kind of a feeling of like, even if we get in there, realistically, Peterborough's going to tear us apart. Bolton will probably do the same. We're probably better off. You're almost better off saying, right, let's finish in that 8th place this season, know that we're not quite there, and actually strengthen in the summer to get ourselves into the next place, isn't it, really? I think. Anyone else stand out in their squad as danger men?
Well, Matthew Penton, they signed from Shrewsbury.
Yeah.
I think they paid over $300,000 for him as well, I think. Or was he free?
He was free. He was a free transfer.
Okay.
Someone else.
Yeah, I'm probably thinking of someone else. But yeah, that was quite a big move for him. I know that much because, and obviously, Feeney was ultimately his replacement at Shrewsbury. Yeah. But yeah, they've certainly, still on paper got a good enough squad for me to be in that top half where they are. I
think George Byers on loan from Sheffield Wednesday was a decent signing in January. Actually, to be fair, he's a good midfielder. I like him. Looking through who else is in there.
Shane Lavery, the Northern Ireland international.
Yeah. CJ Hamilton's always been a pretty good. He's quite rapid, isn't he? If I remember, he's a good player. But I mean, Dembele's the standout one, isn't he? To have a player on loan from Brest in France, you expect him to be a decent player. Jake Beasley's an interesting one. He's one I wouldn't have minded us signing a few years back. Actually, he was the one. He was the lad who was at Rochdale, isn't he? Jake Beasley, I think. And he scored quite a few goals for them. If I remember right, I'm going to check that while we're talking. But he's a really decent player, and I just. Yeah, he was at Rochdale basically, and he scored quite a few goals for them. He scored, having a look at it, he's 27 now. He scored 15 goals in 48 games for Rochdale, having previously been at Solihull Moors and Salford. He was at Salford City for a while as well. So yeah, he's a decent player, but he's got 8 in 28 for Blackpool, so not the worst return in the world, but he's had injury issues, I think, which is why he's not played as much for them. Yeah, I kind of feel like you kind of forget how big a club Blackpool are, don't you? Because there's so many clubs around that Lancashire area. Yeah. And I mean, I was looking at the head-to-head for us, and we barely played them in the last 20 years, really. When you look at it, actually, I think we only played them. I mean, I've got it up here. In fact, in the last 20 years or so, we've played them 1, 2, 3, 4, 7 times. And 2 of those were in the trophy.
I think they were all sort of around the same, probably 2-3 year period as well.
Well, there was 3 of them that were around about the 2005 to 2006 season, and there was another couple more in the 2016-17, and then 1 more in the trophy, and then since then it's this season's the only other one. So we don't play them that often. They've always been well ahead of us, and I think they're in that situation where they've come out the Oyster ownership, and they're trying to really re-establish themselves in a club, and they're having to invest in so much stuff off the field, aren't they, that the Oystons completely neglected for years. I mean, the training ground, have you ever seen their training ground, Squires Gate? It's the same one they were in the 1950s. It's a very basic setup there, and I think they've just got planning permission for their brand new training ground, and it must have been frustrating for years to see the work that was being done at AFC Files down the road and up the coast at Fleetwood. Look at the incredible training centre they've got, and there's Blackpool, who are a massive club compared against Fleetwood. And they're trading at a basic training ground that I think even we would wince at. Considering the setup we've got, it's remarkable, isn't it? So yeah, I kind of feel like they've worked on a really tight squad this season. They've done pretty well to get themselves up in 8th, I think. And I think with a bit of work, I can see them. It's going to be a challenge for them though. When you look at the teams coming up from League 2, we're fully expecting Stockport and Wrexham to do well next season in League 1, with the strength in terms of finance they've got, and the teams coming down from the Championship, some big team potentially coming down, isn't there? If I remember rightly, I had it up just before. Who's coming down from the Championship? Possibly, I should probably know this beforehand. I mean, it doesn't bother us now, really, does it? That's the problem. I mean, Birmingham City and Sheffield Wednesday are both there at the moment.
And Rotherham will always yo-yo as well. I mean, I know they're not as big a club as the other two, but Rotherham will certainly be up there.
Yeah, absolutely. You'd fully expect them to have a bit of money. So it's going to be a tough division next year, League One, a really tough division, I think. They'll lose a couple of big clubs, but there's potential there for it to be a real slogfest again. So, almost glad we're out of it. Not quite glad we're out of it. I have enjoyed being at this level, even though we've been beaten most weeks, but there you go.
But, on the whole, I see a lot of similarities with Northampton when they went up and they went straight back down, but they knew what League One was about.
Yeah.
They should have gone up 2 seasons ago. Bar the ridiculous shenanigans on the final day. Yeah. Obviously, they finally went up last year, and they're holding their own now. Hopefully, it won't take us 2 years to get back up like they did, but we know what League One's about now, and we can equip ourselves for it better. Yeah.
So in terms of let's look at some of the other stats. So in terms of the last 6 games form table, Blackpool 10th in that currently, so they're around about where they are on the table really, with a record of 1 loss, drawn, and then 2 wins in a row. So they're on the back of a 3-0 run. Without a defeat. I'm looking actually at those results, Mike. I mean, not many goals in their games, is there? That's the thing that stands out. No, there's always been at least a clean sheet in each of the games. The 2 games they lost 1-0. The 3 games they've won 1-0. And the game they've drawn was a 0-0 draw. So you could, it potentially could be a tight game. It shows they're not, particularly free scoring, attacking team. And maybe if we get them, there's the potential to get something from the game, isn't there?
Yeah, definitely. And 2 of those teams that they beat 1-0, Cambridge and Fleetwood at home are 2 teams that, no disrespect, but if you have serious ambitions of promotion, you should be battering, really.
Yeah, we should definitely be getting to putting 2 or 3 of them, shouldn't you? Yeah. Really? I mean, you look at Lincoln beat Cambridge, what? 5-1 the other week or 5-0 I think it was. So really you should be looking to, as you say, to get a result there. Last time out, as you mentioned, they beat Fleetwood 1-0. Jake Beattie actually scored the winning goal in that game. Pretty straightforward lineup. I think you'd fully expect Dembele to feature. Other stats. Let's go to the other things. Referee for this one, Tom Reeves from the West Midlands. It's his 3rd season as an EFL referee. Taken charge of 32 games so far this season, handing out 105 yellows and 4 red cards. Last season he handed out 114 yellows and 4 red cards in 37 games. And the last United game he took charge of was a game we went to, wasn't it, Mike? 1-0 defeat at Port Vale early this season. No players were booked for either side that day. That was obviously the game of Anderson's debut, wasn't it? And John Mellish is probably not advised throw-in back to him, but not handled very well at all by Big Jockle in the goal, was it? Which is a shame, but there you go. Head-to-head wise, as I mentioned there, the 48th meeting between the 2 sides. United have won 15, 10 have been a draw, and the Seasiders, have won 22. Just 1 win of our last 6 fixtures against the Tangerines, and that came in the EFL Trophy. Let's talk about United then, Mike. Injury-wise, it's been a delight to remove Joshua Coyote from the list of injured players for the first time this season. All the usuals are out. I think pretty much anybody who's out injured now is done for the season, except maybe Dylan McGeoch might be back for that last game, we think, but whether we'll risk him or not, I don't think it's even worth it, is it really? For maybe he'll take a place on the bench, but as a body possibly, but I don't know. Team selection-wise, what do you do for this one? I mean, obviously we know Hunt's came in on a decent game. It's a much bigger pitch at Brunton Park, we know that. Blackpool have got a little bit of pace in their team in a couple of positions. Do you keep with the same 11 or do you tweak it?
I'd tweak it. Based, the whole Saturday, Tuesday. I think some players are a little bit tired as well. I'd definitely tweak it. But I think with the players that we have available, there's not a lot of options, is there?
Yeah, how do you tweak it though? Because the thing is, the obvious thing is, you put Mellish back into defence. But we haven't got any midfield at the moment, and he's actually doing an all right job there. So you don't really have much choice.
Exactly.
But to put Mellish in there, we're working on the presumption here that Gibson and McCalmont won't feature at the weekend. if that, I imagine Simon wants to get that resolved one way or another before the weekend, so he knows whether they're available or not. As I'm guessing, I'd be surprised if they did. If they, let's presume they don't. And looking at the bench, your only option really is to put Jaden Harris in there, and he doesn't seem to trust Harris enough. Fair enough, he's, if he doesn't think he's good enough. You could bring Jack Diamond in maybe and play him in as a number 10 behind that front two. Not quite as convinced about that. I mean, I suppose there's an option to... I don't know, do you want to put Jack Ellis into midfield maybe?
Jaden Harris?
Before? Well, I mentioned Harris age, he doesn't trust him, and it's... I don't know, because whether Finn Back will play or not is a question as well, because obviously with Finn Back, there's he took a kick to the calf, and that's why he was subbed in this game. If he's fine, I think he starts again for me. I think he had a good game, and I'd like to stick with him. I think I'd agree with you. I probably would have changed it up, but because of the issue with his thing, you've got no choice, really, I think. We haven't got the options in midfield, that's the problem. That's why Robinson's having to play there at the end of the day, so and Mellish as well. So yeah, I think you probably stick with the same 11, I think. Yeah. Hopefully get a few more minutes out of Coyote in this one. You never know.
Yeah, don't push it.
No, we don't want to push it too much. Kind of hoping that we might get to rest Armstrong maybe on the bench for one of these games, because the poor lad must be knackered. The running he's done, but I don't think we'll get a chance to do that. I think Coyote will be on the bench for the rest of the season.
Stick big Thomas Holy up front for Derby away. Why not? Because all this time, like I've really wanted when we signed him to see him go up for a corner. We've never seen it happen. So just go full on Man City, David James, and just stick him up front, because why not?
Lump it. He'll win all his headers. It'd be brilliant. I mean, I suppose you could put Anton Dudek in there almost, because he's he can play as a number 10, I think, as well. So you maybe play him just behind the front two. I don't know. Probably,
or you could play Dudek as a winger. Some young strikers are often sort of bled in as wingers because you get a little bit more time on the ball. Yeah,
it's a hard one to judge, isn't it? We'll see how it goes. Maybe you go 4-4-2, like you said. Maybe you put Robinson on one of the wings and Diamond on the other, and put Neil and Mellish in the middle and go for a back four, and that way possibly that's an option.
That could work.
I don't know. It's a potential option, I guess, but there you go. Right, prediction time. What we're going to go for?
I'll go for a 1-1 draw, and I'll go for a goal from Luke Armstrong.
Okay. So interestingly, we haven't mentioned the table for quite a while, have we, Mike? So do you want to update everyone on the table actually while we're at it?
Yes. So obviously you got 2 points the other night because you predicted a 1-0 win. So Dan's still top on 16, you're on 13, I'm on 3, and our guests, which has largely been Adam this season, are on 0.
Adam finally started predicting the defeat and didn't get any points from any of them. It's just it's not worth it, is it? But...
Yeah, well, I mean, I did that for Peterborough. I predicted that we'd get battered, so maybe I should predict us to lose every week and we'll just win.
Yeah, well, you've just gone for a 1-1 draw there. So I'm going to go... I just think it'd be typical Clyde United to go and win this game. Put an actual performance in. So I'm going to go for 2-1 with goals from Kelly. And Big John, go on, Big John will get a goal. Armstrong will set them both up, I think, as well. I think he'll put a good performance in, so I'm going to go for a 2-1 win. Right, Dan is currently sunning himself on holiday, but he had time to send his prediction in.
Absolute nailed-on performance of the season incoming because I'm away on holiday. I'll go for Carlisle 3, Blackpool 1, Armstrong, Kelly, and Mellish to score.
Ooh, wow. He's gone bold, isn't he? He's gone for the 3-1 win. I was working this out the other day. If all my predictions are coming right this season, we'd be unbeaten throughout the campaign, I think, and we'd win the title quite comfortably. So maybe I need to start being a little bit more realistic. Maybe not next season. Maybe we will do that. I don't know, but we'll have to see. Right there. Thanks, Dan, for your prediction. Right, let's do the X-Files to wrap it up then, Mike, this week. A few little bits to cover here, actually, isn't there? There's been a few goals last weekend, some interesting ones. Starting off in probably the biggest game of last weekend, the Old Firm derby. Rangers 3, Celtic 3, and James Tavernier scored a goal from the penalty spot to extend his lead as the all-time top-scoring defender in British football. So, did you watch any of this game?
No.
I saw a bit of it. It was a crazy game. Like, I think it's a massive shame though that there've been no away fans at this game for like years now. It's just apparently next season it's been resolved and there will be away fans at the games, which is good because that's what you want. You want that atmosphere, a bit of needle, don't you? It's what makes the game so exciting. We're not. Let's be honest. We're not watching Old Firm games for the quality of football, are we? Realistically, we're watching it for the extraordinary moments. There is extraordinary football moments sometimes, but also a little bit of violence as well on the pitch. On the pitch. Players flying into tackles. There hasn't been a red card in this fixture for a while, from what I remember. I think
isn't it?
Some reasons about it. It's nowhere near as common in recent seasons, and part of the reason probably is that atmosphere thing. So,
game's gone.
Game's gone, mate. Game's gone. Paddy Madden, he scored a hat trick, netted a treble for Stockport in their 3-1 win at Sutton United at the weekend. I think they were behind 1-0 behind in this game, didn't they?
Did
Stockport,
they?
if I remember rightly. Yeah. So really important hat trick there from Paddy. Elliot Watt. He was sent off. He was a naughty boy for Salford City. Sent off very deep into injury time in their 1-0 defeat at AFC Wimbledon.
Shame.
Brandon Comley. Not a name we mention very often. He scored a goal for Walsall in their 3-1 win at Tranmere Rovers. Someone we haven't mentioned as much this season, ever since that incident earlier in the season, wasn't it? I think, where he got attacked by a Chesterfield player leaving the game or something like that. Rightly. Hallam Hope. He scored for Oldham in their 1-1 draw at Rochdale in the Greater Manchester derby. Tom Parks, he netted a goal for Hartlepool. I think it might be his first goal for Hartlepool since he signed for them, if I remember rightly. He scored for Hartlepool in their 2-0 home win over Aldershot Town. Good result for Hartlepool, that, because Aldershot are flying, aren't they? They're the top of the National League. Max Hunt, he scored for Buxton in their 3-1 win over Charlie. George Glendon was on the score sheet for Chester as they beat Gloucester City 6-1 in the National League North. Just every time I say that, it just baffles me. Gloucester City, National League North, just stupid. But there you go. And a name we have not mentioned for a long time, Tom Aldred. He scored for Brisbane Roar in their 2-1 win at Western Sydney Wanderers in the A-League. And finally, into midweek, Paddy Madden, he scored for Stockport County in their 2-1 win at Colchester United, and that result means they're just 1 point away from promotion now. And I'm quite pleased to see Stockport up there. Are you, Mike? Because last season when we saw them after the game, we chatted with a few of them, didn't we, in the Euston Tap after the game, and they're really, really good blokes. And we said to them, look, at the end of the day, you are one of the best sides we've played this season. You will be up there. I wish I'd put some money in them to win the title now, even though the odds wouldn't have been that great. It just felt so obvious, didn't it, at the time? Yeah,
definitely. And, I mean, I go on Twitter and try and hunt out salty fans after we beat someone, and none of them were. They were all just genuinely wished us all the best. Not that it counted for anything this season, but yeah, and they're a proper club, and they've been through some seriously dark times. We think we've been through some dark times the past few years, but it's nothing compared to what they've been through. And yeah, it's good to. I always when I first started watching football properly, they were always like a championship club. So yeah, it'd be great for them to sort of get back to their level, really.
Can I throw one out to you here?
Go on.
Next season, potential signing. Name I literally just mentioned.
Paddy Madden.
Paddy Madden. He's out of contract in the summer.
I was half thinking
that
he might be one that they'd let go of.
I wonder that, because I wonder if they might think, we're making a step up here. We want to go for the championship. He's 34 now. He's the captain. He's a big player for them. But they might go, you know what? You've done a brilliant job for us. Thanks very much. On your move. I think he'd be a really good player for us. I think he's such a clever forward, isn't he? I don't know.
I agree, but I think he might still be a bit part player there.
Possibly. I think I wonder if he may do one more year there. Just as a part. But if he wants to play regular football, he might. But then again, he might. We've got Kelly and Armstrong. He might find it tougher to get in there. But I'm just throwing it out there. I just think it's an interesting name. Whether he'll come up high on the old stats bomb thing, I don't know, but we'd have to see. One more little bit that we actually missed in March at the non-league transfer deadline day. Duncan Idahan. He's joined Bath City on loan at the end of the season from Bristol City. God, remember him. Two appearances, Duncan Idahan. That was a signing and a half, wasn't it? But there you go. Yeah, that's it, Mike. Wrapped it up. We've covered off relegation. We're just going to enjoy the rest of the season, aren't we? We're looking forward to our day out at Derby on the last day. Hopefully in the sunshine. Fingers crossed to be nice weather. But little party at Pride Park, try and spoil their party and see how it goes. But it's weird because it's been coming for a while, so I don't think the impact has been quite as strong as it would be if it had gone down to the last day. I don't know.
No, exactly. I mean, like you say, I think maybe some point over this, once the season's over, we'll do a full post-mortem and really sort of delve deep into where it's gone wrong this season. But I'm not, with everything that's going on off the pitch with the club, I'm not losing sleep over it. It's one season, the club's been around since 1904. One relegation in the year 2024 is not going to define us at the end of the day.
It doesn't define us, and I think some people need to. I think the majority of fans have been fine and they've been good. Some fans need to just get a grip sometimes and just accept it. It's one season. It's not the end of the world. And you know what? If we go and storm through League 2 next season, well, great, because we wouldn't do that in League 1 next season. That's a fact. Even with a takeover, we just wouldn't. So let's enjoy the summer. Get excited about some of the signings coming in, because I've heard a few names thrown about, some interesting ones out there, and it's going to be really good to see who does come in. And yeah, let's look forward to it. We've still got 3 games to go, though, so see how they go. Mike, thank you very much for joining me.
Cheers.
Thanks, everyone, for listening. Really appreciate your support all season. It's been a tough slog for all of us. I'm sure we'd all agree there, but it's almost over. The pain is almost gone. And thanks once again to the London branch for their support this season. Really, really appreciate it. And there's only one thing left to say, and that is, of course, up the Blues.
Up the Blues.
All are united between us all.